Memorial Hospital Nutrition Education Series, Nutrition Groups. A big issue with nutrition is awareness. Marketing encourages us to override common sense by pulling on those emotional heartstrings to encourage a purchase. And food companies also know what combinations of foods you find appealing, so once you've eaten it, it's much easier and easier to convince you. But you have to learn to read between the lines. Be wary of people or marketing that tell you to override your common sense, to claim to have all the answers, to say there is only one approach that can help you, that blames others for your choices. Now, sure, we do have influences, but you ultimately make up your own mind. And if you continue to do something that doesn't work for you, you can't always lay the blame at others. So you do have to accept responsibility. Say, if this isn't working, something's got to change. So here are the food groups: grains, fruits, dairy, protein, fats and oils, and vegetables. Now, as you can see, carbohydrates take up a significant amount of the food groups. The grains, the fruits, some of the dairy, so the milk and the yogurt, starchy veggies, and added sugars. And what's important to note that a single portion ranges from a tablespoon to a cup. Most people, when they think of protein, think of animal protein. And this entire slide is mainly animal protein with the exception of tofu. Most single portions will range from 1/4 cup of shredded or cooked to 1 ounce cooked. Bone broth is a cup. And as you can see here, broth, again, the bone broth, your cottage cheese, your cheese and your egg, chicken, pork, beef, deli meats. And these all vary in the amount of fat and in the amount of sodium that may be added during processing. And then fats, oils. These single portions range from a tablespoon to 3 tablespoons, depending on if it's a regular product or maybe it's a lightened up fat. These include animal and plant-based. So probably the easiest way to think about this is balance and portion. When you're looking at your plate, what is the majority of it? Do you have protein, carbs, and fat? As you can see from these 2 pictures at the top, this is mainly carbohydrate. And if you can metabolize carbohydrate, that's great. But when you look at this, you also see, there's a smattering of nuts, so a little bit of fat and a little bit of protein, but it's not super balanced. Whereas if you look at the picture below, this is a hash, and I know what's in it because I made it. There's 1/2 cup of sweet potatoes in there as the carbohydrate, and then there are beets, onions, herbs, and a couple eggs. So this definitely is a much more balanced plate below in terms of spreading out carbs, protein, fat, and veggies. And sometimes you can make some shifts. So you can see here that both of these are pot pies, but at the bottom, the carbohydrate is much lower because it's just a lattice instead of a top and a bottom crust. And this is another example of, at the top, you have a macaroni salad with some vegetables in there. At the bottom, the pasta salad has more vegetables, but certainly you could amp up the veggies and add some protein and decrease your carb to create more balance in this dish. And finally, if you want to take the pasta salad one step further, you could make more of an antipasto salad, where you sub cauliflower for the pasta and then save those carbs to use elsewhere. And one thing that I find is very hard for people is cooking for themselves and their family. So here, consider maybe portioning out something in a separate dish, or having 2 sides, where something can be a little bit more carb heavy for your family if they need the carbs, and you can add more vegetables and protein to that same basic dish and make it work for everybody. So usually the first question I ask someone, can you metabolize what you eat? And then also, do you know what you're eating? These are all very carb-forward dishes that would require somebody who has high energy needs or is very active to be able to metabolize it. So again, you have to consider your situation and you have to consider your balance on your plate to determine if this is really appropriate for you. Now, for somebody who is eating the prior plate, this would be an improvement. You can choose to divvy up your plate however you wish. Some people might do a certain amount of protein and non-starchy veggies and grains, but these are 3 different organizations. And again, it just depends on where you're starting from, what your next steps would be to go to. But this way, there's no measuring, there's not nearly as much thought involved, and some people do see some pretty significant changes just with a plate outline. And if you're a very visual person, some of these tools might help you. The fine china on the right versus the bamboo in the middle versus the Chinette plate on the left. So your to-do list here. So which of the food groups are usually on your plate? Does your plate include carbs, protein, and fat? Make sure it's not just all carbs. What food groups could you add to balance your plate? So that would mean likely shifting down your carbs and increasing your protein and increasing your veggies. Could you start using plate proportion as an easy outline? Because some people get very overwhelmed and the recipe and the menu planning is enough for them without thinking about portions. So again, consider if this is a good place for you to start. And finally, do you have any special needs or goals that may change your macronutrient needs?